You have 10 seconds now. So if you'd like to, you can close your eyes and think of the names of rulers who have ruled India. Your 10 seconds starts now. Time's up. If you want to, you can take a minute and write it down. Or if you're up for it and if it's all in your mind, you can just tell me the names.
Can I say
Go on.
Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, Maharana Pratap, Chandragupta Maurya too. That's all that came to my mind.
This is awkward, very modern. Narendra Modi. I have come from outside and I do not know too much about Indian history. So, please do not find my answers weird. I am not in ICSE curriculum or CBSE curriculum. I am in Cambridge curriculum, so they just teach worldwide stuff, not only Indian history.
I understand that Satvik especially, you've lived
Yeah.
outside the country for many years and you've just come back to India recently and you've joined an international board curriculum, which is Cambridge curriculum. But my question is, do you think it's fun to know about people who've ruled India?
My thought is yes, because then your mind goes like, okay, so this is how my ancestors were. This is why you get to know yourself more, kind of. So
Yeah.
that is why I think yeah.
So, Kiansh, you study in an Indian board curriculum, right?
Yes, like ICSE.
Okay. And how excited are you to hear about stories related to Indian history? Or is it so boring? I've already learned it in my school textbook so many times, please.
Actually, it is not very boring. Like all the people who used to live in the past times have done a very silly mistake. Like the people who have harmed you, they forgive them, and that's the biggest mistake that they have done probably right now.
Do you have any example that comes to your mind when you're making this point?
Uh, Maharana Pratap.
Can you tell me the story related to Maharana Pratap? Because not a lot of listeners will know. And Satvik, I think you probably don't know this, right? About how he forgave his greatest sworn enemy. You want to tell us that story
No,
quickly?
no.
I have heard that Maharana Pratap forgave his enemies when he did something bad.
So Maharana Pratap forgave Muhammad Gauri. Muhammad Gauri had invaded his country and eventually he caught him as a prisoner and he said, "ठीक है, I will give you back your life. Go back. अपनी जिंदगी जी ले." And
That's
Gauri,
what the mistake he did.
that is a mistake he did. And Gauri came back, attacked, and brutally murdered him. So it's very interesting that both of you came up with a bunch of names. And I think, given that Kiansh has studied Indian history for quite some years now, all the three names that he did come up with were rulers who were kings. In other words, I mean rulers who were males. But India has had many queens who have ruled the country. And they were not just queens who were married to kings and sat on a throne beside them. I'm talking about queens who ruled a kingdom in their own right. They all fought wars, they managed their kingdoms efficiently, they were able to implement infrastructure, social projects with excellent administrative ease. They conducted political dialogues with neighboring kings. These were queens who did all of that. So this podcast series on queens who ruled India is something that I've long wanted to do because I wanted to bring stories of the queens who have ruled this country in their own right, and several of these are stories we don't get to read in our history textbooks, regardless of whether you study in a Cambridge curriculum or an Indian board curriculum. So good news, Satvik, is even Kiansh wouldn't have heard many of the stories that we're going to be covering as part of this podcast series. But we should do our regular introduction, shouldn't we?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
So, hi, you're listening to What's New Today. This is a kids and family podcast about current events shaping our lives. Of course, this podcast series is an exception because it is not about a current event that is shaping our lives. As Satvik put it, I don't think I could have put it better. It's a series that helps us understand how our ancestors in this land lived. It's one way for us to touch base with what life was like then. So this episode is about a queen very, very few of us are likely to have heard. The Portuguese called her Rainha de Pimenta or the Pepper Queen. She ruled a small kingdom along the coast of Karnataka. The kingdom was called Keladi. The queen was called Chennamma. And I'd like to draw attention to our listeners. Do not confuse her with Kittur Rani Chennamma. She lived about 100 years later. I've forgotten to introduce my two young co-hosts for today.
Hello, I am Kian. I live in Mumbai and I am studying in Aspinuthan Academy School. I am 10 years old.
Welcome back, Kiansh.
Hi, I am Satvik Bhojnagarwala. I live in Calcutta and I study in the Heritage School. And I am in 7th grade and I am 12 years old.
Welcome, Satvik. So we've already established how much history we all know. So let's get into the story of Keladi Chennamma, shall we?
Yes.
I know both of you have done a little bit of research on this queen. Would you know where Keladi exists?
In Karnataka, present day Karnataka.
It was along the Malabar coast.
Yep, that's right. So, if any of you looked at the modern day map of the state of Karnataka, you can find that Karnataka has a very long coastal line. The kingdom of Keladi was a small part of Karnataka and it ran entirely along the coast. So, this geographical presence offered that kingdom lots of advantages. And to find out what advantages they got, we'll play a small game. I'll give you two words, see if you can connect these two and tell us what the advantage was, okay? Pepper and ships.
Maybe they used to export peppers to other areas that were on the coast of the Arabian Sea.
Yes, I think so. They grew pepper plants along the coast, or they could export pepper from the ships they built.
Ma'am, and maybe they could use pepper to just trade with other countries for other resources.
I think he's right.
Both of you are absolutely bang on. I'll just take a small step back and tell you a little bit about the story of pepper. You know, black peppercorns that we all eat. Have you had black peppercorns? What kind of taste does it have?
Peppery?
Okay. Do you like having peppercorns just as is? Have you ever put one in your mouth?
Yes, ma'am, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it actually feels a lot of spicy, tangy, and little bit chewy in your mouth.
Absolutely. But I don't think you'll want to go ahead and have a second and a third and a fourth pepper, would you?
No,
No.
it feels a bit weird having it again and again.
Yeah, one is quite powerful and pungent, like you said, but beyond that, we may not like. So, peppercorn was something that was prized a lot across the entire world because it had some unique properties in terms of the kind of taste that it gave. Because you need to add just a tiny little bit of pepper and for the food to change its flavor entirely. But black peppercorn was grown in only one tiny part of the entire world about 4,000 years ago. And that was on the Malabar coast of India. So the Indians who used to produce pepper, they used to trade with many big, powerful kingdoms like the Egyptians about 4,000 years ago. But remember, pepper was considered the king of spices. So it was pretty expensive. So if you did visit Egypt about 4,000 years ago, it's not like you would find pepper on the plates of every household. Where do you think you would find pepper?
Probably in the royals cooking, like the royals food.
You're really bang on. You know, it used to be something that the pharaohs and the emperors who used to be able to afford pepper. And one very interesting trivia here is that The pharaohs who would be mummified, right, after their death, they would keep one peppercorn under the nostril of each of those pharaohs. Now, remember, beside them, there'd be heaps and mounds of gold and silver, but there'd be this one tiny little peppercorn under their nostrils.
Like, did it actually help them to preserve their bodies?
As far as I know, the pepper did not play a very prominent role in, preserving the body. I think it sort of was something that they added to the mummies because the Egyptians believed that, whatever was being buried with the royalty or, the kings was something that the king would use in his afterlife. So I think only in that spirit that they added those fragments of little peppercorns in their nostrils. I don't think that it played any medicinal role then. We've established that the Egyptians loved pepper and pepper was very expensive. Now, a lot of people started finding pepper very useful to add to their flavor of the food. The main people who controlled the trade of pepper between India and Africa were the Arabs. So the Arab kingdoms were somewhere in between India and Africa. So the Arabs controlled the pepper trade and they used to concoct fascinating tales to sort of terrify others from entering into the pepper trade. They made tales that there were huge dragons which were guarding the pepper vineyards of Kerala and Karnataka.
That's devilish.
Yes, but why would people think that? Have they even seen a dragon before, maybe?
I don't know, but I'm sure if you
How
make
how can they assume that if they haven't even seen a dragon? They're just randomly believing them.
today it's very easy for us to say, oh, these mythical creatures really didn't exist. But imagine a time when people haven't really traveled as much around the world. But if I did tell you that there's a dragon sitting in Antarctica, I don't think you're going to believe it. And why would you not believe it?
Ma'am, there are researchers and there are people who've gone to the South Pole and they've traveled in Antarctica. Even normal people can go to Antarctica.
Like,
And
people,
until now, I haven't heard of any dragons being in Antarctica. And
Correct.
also, if there were any dragons, they would probably freeze to death.
So,
like people are still living there. How can there be dragons?
but we have the benefit of all this because we have internet. We can read, we can see YouTube videos, we can see interviews of researchers. So, and we can see visual proofs that there are no dragons sitting in Antarctica. But if nobody's ever been there, and there's only one person who's been there, and he comes back and tells you that there's a dragon sitting in Antarctica, which can survive in that weather, how do you not believe?
Yeah, then I'd probably believe it.
Yeah. So the Arabs continued to concoct these tales, and that's how they maintained their monopoly. But of course, as time went, and more of these traders actually visited the pepper vine yards of Kerala or Karnataka, they obviously saw that there were just human beings who were guarding them and not dragons. Over the next 2000 years or so, now pepper had become so prized, right? That these black peppercorns also traveled to other parts of Southeast Asia and people started growing pepper in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Sri Lanka, and many more countries. So then it was not just the Indian peninsula that was growing pepper. There were many other countries also that started growing pepper. But even through all of these years, despite pepper being produced in so many other parts of the world, it was still very valuable. Many kingdoms in Europe used to raise armies and launch naval ships in search of trade routes so they could buy this pepper from India. Does any explorer come to your mind? An explorer who came to
Vasco
visit
da
in...
Gama.
Yes, Vasco da Gama came to India because he wanted to find a trade route to buy pepper from India.
And then that led to the invasion of the British.
Yeah, but of course, and he also found out that there were no dragons.
That's true.
So he did succeed, and after he came, the Portuguese king raised huge armies, and eventually it was the Portuguese who took over the entire pepper trade. So now we'll come to the timeline when our story about this queen begins. But around the time when she was born, the pepper trade in that kingdom was almost entirely controlled by the Portuguese. It was their ships that would come, buy pepper from the kingdom of Keladi, and the producers in Keladi would sell and they would make lots of money, and that's how the kingdom was very rich. Chennamma was a little girl and she was born to a merchant called Siddhappa Shetty. Do you know anything more about her childhood?
Nothing else. I after that I just skipped to the part that how he got married to Somashekara Nayaka and all that.
And she did not have a royal upbringing, so she's not from any royal family at all. Okay, so now Kiladi Chennamma meets the king of that kingdom. The king was Somashekara Nayaka, and I think they met at a fair.
So he basically fell in love with Chennamma at first sight. So he sent somebody to Siddhappa Shetty's house to ask for a marriage proposal with Chennamma. Quite obviously, Siddhappa Shetty agreed, and they got married in the palace, and they basically were married for 10 years before the king was killed.
Yeah, but before we come to the king's killing, in the interim 10 years, I think we should talk about how the queen, Chennamma, started to equip herself to become a good administrator or a ruler of the kingdom. Because we should remember that she had not been raised as royalty, she was raised as a merchant's daughter, so she had a relatively regular childhood. But after she got married to the king, Somashekara Nayaka, she showed a lot of interest in learning the arts of warfare, music,
Politics.
and politics. Yes, as a queen, you need to know how to manage politics well, right? So, yeah. So, she had access to some of the best gurus in the kingdom, and they taught her how to administer the kingdom also quite well. So, now this came in handy even before the king had died. And how? Around this time, there was somebody in the kingdom who was trying to weaken the king by feeding him a little bit of poison regularly. And slowly, that poison started taking over the king and it had weakened his system. So the king was barely able to attend to the court matters.
When the king wasn't there, the ministers over there were asking for advice how to pick up with the people who प्रजा के साथ कैसा बातें करने की और हमारे देश को ज्यादा अच्छा बनाने के लिए कैसे करने का. So they took advice for that, and the queen really helped up with that a lot.
Wow, yes. So at this time, like how Kiansh was explaining very beautifully, how a king has to manage the public, how they need to take care of all of these affairs. So the queen stepped into the shoes of the king and she quietly took control of the administration and she offered advice to people who came to her also. She was able to manage the finances of the kingdom at this time. She entered into trade treaties with the Portuguese. So she ensured that her spice farmers and the merchants, they all earned well. She also kept the army in very good fighting condition throughout the period, even when the king was unwell and he couldn't attend to the court matters. And then the king died.
The king, Somashekara Nayaka, fell in love with the dancer, and the dancer's father, some of the sites say that he used black magic, and some of the sites say that he used some sort of potion that actually weakened the king and then actually killed him.
Which do you believe? Was it black magic or was it a slope? Was it a potion that slowly killed him, weakened him, and killed him?
I think it's the latter, the second one, because I don't exactly I'm sure how exactly magic could have killed him.
What does Kyansh think? I know you've also scoured the internet and come up with theories of
Like,
how
I
the king
don't
died.
think so. The king might have been killed by potions or poison. I think he must have been killed by black magic because most of the people knew how to do black magic, and black magic was kind of influential at that time.
either one of this is possible. Since I don't know anything about black magic, my personal vote will go for some kind of a food that can slowly poison and weaken your system. I'm a great fan of Harry Potter, so I will reserve my judgment on whether magic can indeed exist in the real world. Now, coming back to our story of Keladi Chennamma. So now the king is dead, Somashekara Nayaka. Normally, what would happen when a king dies and he leaves no children of his own?
Queen who is there will start to adopt a child and train the child, him or her, whoever it is. The queen will start to handle into politics and warfare a little bit more.
Yeah, so one part that Kian said, I think that's correct, is that queen adopts a child and trains him. And until then, maybe the queen would probably, as in the story of Keladi Chenma, she would probably take over the kingdom until the boy was able enough to control the kingdom and manage all the duties of the kingdom.
I hate to burst this bubble. That is not typically what happens. Ideally, I would have liked it. I would have even liked that the queen simply takes over and runs the kingdom in her own name. But that is not usual. So, what was usual was either the king's brother or a cousin or a nephew or a very powerful army general or a local chieftain or a combination of these will stake claim to the throne.
Okay, so basically, it has to be a man of some male gender, no matter who it is.
Yes, very sadly so. That is what used to happen. And there would be a lot of fighting amongst themselves, and things usually got very ugly. And you can see this in many stories. Even amongst the Mughals, you would find brothers would kill brothers, or the son would imprison his father when he's ready to rule a kingdom. So this used to be the case in many kingdoms, and this was also the case in Keladi. Now, but you should remember one thing, whoever tries to stake their claim for the throne, they would have to be very tough, and they should know how to get a large chunk of the army as well as the merchants to support them. Even in Keladi, after the king Somashekara Nayaka died, a lot of people, nephews and brothers and cousins, they all staked their claim. The queen also entered the fray, and she threw her hat into the ring, which means she said, even I have the right to rule this kingdom. Before the king had died, she had actually handled the administration of the kingdom. She had proven to people that she was kind, she was able, and she was just. She was also very smart. Now, in this period when she had been the administrator of the kingdom, she had ensured that the army chieftains, the very powerful trade merchants, they would all support her if she chose to ascend the throne. So she had already garnered their support. And that was why she was able to retain and stay on the throne after the king had died. Then came the first big threat to her. So now look at this kingdom of Keladi. The king has died. The land is rich thanks to pepper. And who's the ruler right now? A queen, a lady. If you were a king in a neighborhood kingdom, you would think it should be a cakewalk for you to walk in with your army, defeat them, and take over that kingdom. Would you think so?
Like if I had been an Indian ruler, yes. But if present day me grew up and went there, so I would probably know that this is one of the queens that I should never mess with.
We're speaking with hindsight, which is 2020. So the neighborhood king was the Sultan of Bijapur, and unfortunately, like Kian, he had not had the benefit of hindsight of reading what had happened in his history textbooks. So he decided to invade the kingdom of Keladi. But this is where a masterstroke of the Rani comes in. So she knew that her kingdom was in a state of flux, which means it was going to be really difficult for her to defeat a large army. The Bijapur army was very big, and her army was outnumbered. The soldiers of Bijapur army reached the capital city of Keladi. The capital city was a place called Bidnur. When they reached the gates of Bidnur and they opened and entered the city, they found that the entire city was deserted. There was not a single soul. There was not a single piece of jewelry. The entire royal treasury was empty. Not one gold coin was there. How would you feel if you were the soldier who has been promised by your king lots of riches if you reach this kingdom and you can loot it and become rich?
All this effort I have done, it has all gone down in vain.
And I would be extremely mad, like so mad, because I could live a great life, but this queen just moved all of things, and I have to continue with this life.
So the soldiers of Bijapur felt the same way. They were shocked, disappointed beyond words. So what had happened was that she had moved all the people of her city inside a fort in a place called Bhuvangiri, which was far away, and it was a well-protected fort. It was up in the hills surrounded by dense forests. So now the Bijapur army had no other choice. They had to march towards the Bhuvangiri fort now. The Keladi army had a big advantage because if they had to fight on an open ground, the war, they would have lost the Bijapur army because they were outnumbered. But here, the queen had shifted the battleground to a territory that was in her favor. It was in the middle of forests on top of a range of hills. So from here, she was able to direct her army to conduct guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is like, small groups of people. They would attack from high points on the hills when the Bijapur army would march through a narrow valley, and they would attack and they'd be able to easily defeat them.
Like Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and Tanhaji also used this trick.
How would they attack? Like, if they tried to just jump down, they would obviously just get killed. But would they use arrows or something to just attack them?
Yes, they would use all forms of weaponry. So they would use arrows. If they had guns, they would have used a bit of that also from above the hills. They were not going to personally pounce on top of the people from above. Even if it's within the forests, a guerrilla tactic is something when a small group of people would suddenly surprise a large band of army, which would be caught unawares, and that's how they'd get destroyed. So the same thing happened here also. The Bijapur Sultan's armies, they were defeated. The queen won. In the course of her rule, many other kings attacked Keladi. Like the Maharaja of Mysore, he tried to attack her 3 times, and all 3 times she was able to defeat them. But here, there was one very smart thing she did. Chhatrapati Shivaji was still alive when she was there, and she entered into a treaty with him where he offered to support her whenever she needed help. In the course of all your research, how was her rule described?
Powerful, influential,
Strategy and influence.
So she was good at strategy and she was able to influence the people in the army and the merchants. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Using her strategies and using her cleverness, she managed to gain influence over, and she managed to even defeat huge armies like the Mughal army.
Yes. We have to end with the most amazing story about how she's the one and only queen or ruler in India who had ever defeated the Mughals. So at this time, Aurangzeb was the most powerful ruler in India. I think at the time Aurangzeb ruled, he was perhaps the richest man in the world. So he was that powerful. We should keep that in mind. So he was very keen on conquering the Deccan. The Marathas under Shivaji Maharaj, they were making life very difficult for Aurangzeb. Chhatrapati Shivaji had died at this time of the story, his sons Shambhaji had come to power, and the Mughals, they were able to buy the loyalty of one of Shambhaji's relatives. They managed to capture Shambhaji, they tortured him and they put him to death. At this time, Shambhaji's younger brother, his name was Rajaram, he was Chhatrapati Shivaji's second son, he ascended the throne. So, right after he ascended the throne, what Shambhaji's wife said was, the Mughals have now laid siege. They've surrounded us. We can hold out for some time, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for all the Marathas to be confined to this one spot when the Mughals have surrounded us. The siege is not very tight as of now. So if we really have to distract the Mughal emperor's attention, we should all go in different ways and keep attacking Aurangzeb from different parts of the country and not just stay inside this fort. So she advised Rajaram that he with his followers should clear out before the siege became very stringent. She said, I will stay here with my little infant son Shahu and I will lead the effort from here to defend this fort. But in the meanwhile, you please escape. So Rajaram agreed with her, took her blessings and he left. So one day in Keladi, the Rani Chennamma was giving away alms to the poor. And a monk approached her. And then he told her, Rani, I am Rajaram, the son of Chhatrapati Shivaji. My followers and I, we want to escape to a fort called Jinji Fort. It's in Tamil Nadu. At that time, Jinji Fort was the most powerful fort. It was very, very hard for any Mughal ruler to invade the Jinji Fort. So he wanted to escape to the Jinji Fort. But to get to Jinji, I need to go through some of the kingdoms in South India. It was not just him. He had a large bunch of followers also who had to go. So please give us passage to go through your kingdom. So far, I've approached many other kings, but none of them is willing to give me passage, because if they offered Rajaram passage, the entire might of the Mughal army would come and attack them. Because Aurangzeb is not going to take it nicely if someone offers passage to Rajaram. Will you offer me passage? Is what Rajaram asked Chennamma. What did Chennamma
Yes,
do?
ma'am. She agreed that yes, I will let you pass with the kingdom.
Why do you think she agreed?
There are two reasons, like Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and she had a treaty signed. And the second reason is that she also had to fight with the Mughals. So if the Mughals attacked them, the Mughals will have trouble fighting with them over there, as the capital was by default Bhuvanagiri.
You're absolutely right. I think the primary reason was what you said, which was that she had originally signed a peace treaty with Chhatrapati Shivaji, and there was a common cause at that point in time. You know, all the Hindu kings trying to stand up to the Mughal ruler. So she may have had that common cause, and on top of it, she felt that there was a Raja Dharma, which is if someone comes and asks you for help, ideally you should help if that person's father has helped you in the past, right? Chhatrapati Shivaji had already said that I will stand by you if you get attacked by someone. Now that person's son is coming and asking her for help. It was only the right thing for her to do to help him. But at what price? She would now have to face the might of the entire Mughal army. Now, Aurangzeb found out that Rajaram was going to pass through the kingdom.
Yeah, so Aurangzeb sent Rani Chennamma a letter that we will be at peace and we will not attack you if you hand Rajaram over. But if you don't, then we will attack you. But by the time that letter had actually reached Rani Chennamma, Rajaram had actually already left the Keladi kingdom. So Rani Chennamma tried to reply that no, it is not possible because he has already passed through a kingdom, so we cannot give him back to you.
Aurangzeb got the letter and he growled in rage. He sent his army to invade Keladi immediately. But here's the master stroke. Now, many powerful kings have lost big battles for very simple reasons, like they ignored the seasons of the year. So what Aurangzeb did was his army attacked Keladi in the thick of a monsoon season. So once again, what Chennamma did was she moved the people and the main part of the capital away from the Bidnur fort into the Bhuvanagiri fort. So she again got advantage of the forest and the hills and all of that. To that, add two problems for Aurangzeb. Problem number one, it is pouring like there is no tomorrow. When it rains along the Western Ghats, for people who live in Kerala and Karnataka, they will know how it is. It rains really, really heavily. So the rains came. That made life very difficult for the Mughal soldiers. On top of it, the swamps and the rains brought other diseases also. There was a second problem, which was the Maratha forces, which were still, elsewhere. They also came to support the Keladi army. So the rain gods and the Marathas together came, and the Mughals had to fight in an alien territory filled with diseases and swamps amidst all the rains, with the guerrilla tactics of, people fighting from hilltops behind thick forests. What do you think happened to the Mughals?
They were defeated because they probably did not think of these tactics, or they did not know of these tactics.
We don't know what it was. But in the meanwhile, Aurangzeb found out that that Rajaram had reached Jinji Fort. So, he turned his attention towards Jinji Fort. He knew he was going to lose this war in Keladi, and he didn't think it was worth his while. So he signed a peace treaty with Keladi Chennamma and left the kingdom in peace. I know this is not a story you all have read in your textbooks.
It was actually great. I think this should honestly be in our textbooks. Like, this is not some small feat defeating the Mughal army. This is actually a huge feat.
I also agree to Satvik's point. It should surely be in our textbooks because Rani Keladi did so much for the Marathas. The Marathas are in our textbooks, but the people who helped the Marathas are not in the textbook. So how does that make it nice?
I totally agree with you. I must thank two authors whose works I refer to as a research material on this queen. One of them is the late Shanta Devi Malwad. She's a famous Kannada literary figure. She's written a book on Rani Chennamma. And the other is Archana Garodia Gupta. She's written a beautiful book called The Women Who Ruled India. If you would like to find links to these books, if you would also like to look up the pictures of the forts that Rani Chennamma defended and where they are today, do head over to the blog that I'd written about this queen. You can find link to that in the show notes below. Coming next week is a story of the only Mughal woman ruler who had the authority of a sovereign empress. But for now, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.